Hey guys, I'm Alex from CGIFarm and I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up multiple cameras for your scenes. I'm using a scene from Arch Interiors. It's from the package 31, and I'm going to set the project folder to the location where I downloaded this file. Using project folders in 3ds Max will allow 3ds Max to search for missing assets in the entire project folder. So it's a good thing to do when you first start up. So I'm going to open this scene to show you what we're working with. The scene has lights set up and cameras, but I'm going to use just the lights from this scene and build Xref scenes that are going to render this with different cameras, different angles. You can animate cameras, set up light caches or other prepasses and so on. So this is the scene, shaded, realistic. All right. I did a test render and tweak the settings a bit so I get the renders faster. It's fine. And what the next thing I'm going to do is to create a new reset. I'm going to create a new scene and Xref all the objects from this scene. When you're using Xref, you have two options. You either Xref a 3ds Max scene or the objects from a scene. Xrefing a 3ds Max scene will not allow you to move the objects from that scene, and you can put a null objects to move the entire scene, but you won't be able to touch the objects, hide them, or do whatever. So let's call it camera 1. Cam 1. Cam 1. To Xref a scene, you go to Reference, and I'm going to show you what Xref scene is doing first. By the way, I got this idea of using Xref for setting up cameras from Lotaro Vogel from Zoa Studio. He was rendering some scenes on our farm and he asked me, oh, do you support Xref? And yeah, I do, but it takes a little longer to process the scenes this way because 3ds Max will open each camera multiple times, so it's going to open the scene and then load the Xref scene, and that takes a bit longer than having all the cameras in one scene. But when you're dealing with light cache, where when your setup is with multiple people working on that scene, and you want someone to take care of geometry and someone else take care of the lighting and camera, using Xref gives you this kind of flexibility. And you could merge the scenes and obtain one scene, but then you'll have to upload the same scene with each camera multiple times, and that's not that great when you're dealing with a couple 100 megabyte scenes. So this is what it's doing. It's importing the 3ds Max scene as a whole, and in the Xref options you can Xref scenes, you can put a null on this, from what I remember. Parent, yeah, you can put a parent. So I'm going to create this box object and bind it. All right, and now when you're going to move this box object, you're moving the scene as well. So this is an okay way if your scene, if you don't have to move objects in your scene, but I think most of the cases will require that. So let me reset and reopen my scene. Xref objects. And this is a 250 megabytes 3ds Max file, so not too heavy, but not very light either. I chose to use a proper 3ds Max file and not do this with boxes, because then you might say, okay, this works on small scale test, but when you're dealing with multiple objects, it's not working. But the Xref, the idea of showing this video came from having a user asking if we support scene states. And we were actually working on supporting the scene states, because at the first glance you'll say that's the perfect tool to use when you have multiple things like hiding layers, hiding cameras and stuff like this. But this is working up to some level, and after that, after you reach a certain level, it starts to break. And the problem is that it's not saying, okay, we support this, this, and that. You'll have to find yourself what it's supported when it breaks. And if you're relying on this pipeline and then you do some setting, or I don't know, change the master state, and then all the other states are going to break, then you are going to have a big issue. So the Xref thing is not as flexible, I would say, because you need to choose what kind of Xref you're doing. It's cannot control everything like in or most of the things like you do in scene states, but this works, and it doesn't seem to be breaking as often as scene states. From my experience, I could not get Xref to break, only when you have missing assets or things like this, but this is common to any kind of scene, that if the max file is not there, then it's not going to be imported. So this is it. I imported the objects, and here you get a list of the objects that got Xrefed in. And let's check my scene explorer. Pardon me. You also get the cameras from the other scene. You can delete it as any object. Let's go max. So let's create a camera. I'm going to create a physical camera. Camera target, and you can put layers, or you can put these objects on layers, or do whatever you want in here. Thing is that if the master scene will change, you might get the objects missing as well from these layers, but there should be some communication and some workflow that you put together when you work with multiple people on one scene, and you know the stage of the scene, if it's the blocking stage, or you can do a blocking stage for all the objects, and then you know that it's not going to change. You can do a blocking stage where you put, okay, this is going to be a table, this is a chair, and stuff like this, and you Xref all those objects. The Xref objects can be groups, and the groups containing other objects, like a box. If you change the box to a chair and keep the naming the same, then your master scene where you set up the cameras and the lights will automatically import the chairs and the tables that got created in the meanwhile. We were actually using this kind of workflow when I was working on a game, and we were building the scene inside 3ds Max, assembling everything in here, and then exporting to Unity, and everything got updated pretty nice. So yeah, let me try to get some camera angle. Didn't do this in a while, so like this. Where the camera is. Okay, actually, let's try this. Okay. Xref object. All right. So let's say like your first shot is something like this. And like I said, the advantage of using this kind of setup when you have one 3ds Max file for the camera is that the scene that gets created is very small, so it only contains one camera and the links to the Xref object, so it's less than 1 megabyte. And here we can do this kind of settings, like you want to test, let's put V-Ray. You want to test, I don't know, different render times, different resolution. You are free to do anything you want in this kind of things. And this is like having scene states, but you are assured that it gets saved. One thing that you must do is to set your render settings again. If you already created those in, so light cache, irradiance, set it on medium. 1000. That should be fine. So you can choose to do a fly through, save the light cache and the irradiance map. Actually, when you're using irradiance map, you could use light cache on single frame. If you have an animation, for example, use it on single frame, build the irradiance map, and then you can turn off the light cache, because the baking process for irradiance map is going to include the calculation from the light cache, and then you don't need the light cache file anymore. All right, single frame. But I'm not doing animation, I'm going to do some still renders of this. And hopefully the default will work. Let's set the time to 1 minute. Okay. Let's see what happens. I'm thinking actually to create a script which will load the settings from one 3ds Max file to another, because we're already exporting the settings from our 3ds Max plugin, and it will be like an importer created to get the settings, the V-Ray or Corona settings applied to another scene. I think that will be a good tool. If you think that's something you want to see, I'm going to do a small script in the future video. All right, so it's rendering. That's what I wanted to see. The light is a bit brighter, but I guess it's the camera settings. I will let you deal with that, because I don't particularly like tweaking this kind of things. I'm more into the technical part of the rendering and getting the scene having all the assets and stuff like this. But tweaking the settings for render is not something that I can say I'm good at. All right, so it's rendering. You see you got the idea. I'm going to set the render output here as well. don't forget to set render output and render elements. We are giving a warning if you're checking the package info, but we tried before to enable as default some render output, but then some user did not wanted the common output and wanted just the render elements, and we decided to let the user choose what kind of render output he wants. So render common.exr, and let's throw in some render elements as well. I don't know. Denoiser using frame buffer, and so lots of user using the separate render channels. So one thing that I want to mention for common output, for example, if you want the render passes, let's see if I can bring that set up. If you want the render passes to get included in the EXR that you're exporting, you should set the automatically add remove render elements from scene from render dialog. If you are adding the elements manually here, these won't get saved with the 3ds Max file, but these settings seem to be saved properly. I'm going to test more to make sure this is the case, but I checked the problem on adding the render elements here manually and not getting saved in the common output. But I remember that setting this on automatically add or remove was working fine, but I'm going to check to make sure and let you know in the comments or description or something. So yeah, I have the render element set up, the common output set up. Anything else? I don't think so. I need to save the scene, and I'm going to create another copy of it to show you how you can include multiple scenes when you're packing the scene for CGIFarm. Okay, so let's move the camera a bit and change. I don't need to change its name. But it's actually good to have different names for your cameras. In case you're using light caches or other kind of caches, it's good to name those with the cameras that you are going to render. The purpose for this is when we're processing the scene on CGIFarm, we're looking for the names of the caches and assign those for each scene that requires those. We are also looking for the folder name, so if you have the same name of the camera in a different folder, we're going to pick it correctly, but it's much safer to use different naming for the light caches or other files that your scene is dependent on. So let's change this camera angle a bit so we can see clearly that's a different render. And okay, so I'm going to save this as well. The render output gets exported to a different folder for each scene, so you're not required to change it. All right, I saved this in, and then I'm going to launch the render with CGIFarm. If you don't have the CGIFarm sync application started, it will ask you this message to start it with the plugin. And performing sanity check. Will let you know if you have some missing assets. And it looks like I have some missing assets. There's a problem with the master scene not having the assets, not having paths for the assets. 3ds Max will find them when you open the scene directly, but it looks like when you're using Xref, it's a good idea to set the paths for your scene. So to get around this problem, I'm going to open that scene. I'm not going to change anything because I think I know a way to fix this without having to change, but I need to perform sanity check on I keep calling master scene, and I get the feeling that I said for the camera as being as master scene as well. This one is actually the child scene, because it's the one that gets imported into a different scene where you set up lights and other kind of scene and other kind of settings. So this is the child scene, and the cameras are the master scenes. So let's perform sanity check again. Extension is not supported. All right. So you get some names in the render elements, but they don't have an extension. Actually, I don't care of these render elements because I'm not going to do it. Not going to render this scene on its own. Going to use the render elements. I need to save it. One thing that might speed up your saving is to check under Customize and Preferences and see if you have the compress on save. I don't actually need this. This is good when you're moving files locally without zipping the package, but if you are going to zip the package, the file is going to get compressed anyway. So our plugin is going to collect the scene files, and it's going to zip them anyway, so you don't need to compress on save. It's going to save you some time when performing the saving process on your scene. Mode is used, common render, disable. All right, I don't care. I'm going to go into the prepare mode now. Yes. So scene, what I want to do is to add this folder with the other scenes, because when you're performing sanity check, is going to, on the prepare stage, is going to show you just the 3ds Max scene that you had open. But if you want to append different scenes, you can do so. And if you have light caches, those won't get appended automatically from this kind of scene, because this one doesn't even have Xref, doesn't even know about the scene we set up here. So you can add them manually. So let's say if you have a scene, I don't have any, but let's say this is a file you want to include, you can do so, and this is going to be appended into the zip archive that's going to be sent to CGIFarm. At this point, you can zip this and upload it manually on our web dashboard. You can do that as well, but I would recommend using the plugin, because this also will set up the folder where the rendered files are going to be downloaded automatically. And going to choose upload now. Going to ask you to which location you want to upload, and I'm going to fire it for upload. So here is going to show you the step that's doing, and right now it's archiving. It's creating an archive which is going to be uploaded, and the location for this is in appdata CGIFarm. The reason I'm showing this, some users asked me if it's possible to change this because they didn't have enough space in C drive. This is the default location, C drive, and you can set it to a different drive which has more storage. I'm going to show you something really quick. So this is the file that is getting created. I wanted to show you this, so in case the archiving process breaks or you get a crash in the application, you might have remained files in here, so you can delete them manually to free up the space if it's needed. Here we also copied the files so we can zip them properly. All right, once the zipping process finishes, it's going to start uploading. I actually started uploading. And my computer is freezing a bit. This is from the last Windows 10 upgrade or update. It's not the upgrade. All right. Control-Alt-Delete. Yeah, this always solves the problem. All right, the package got uploaded to our base location, and I can check the web dashboard now. Under the packages, you will see it on the processing. I know I'm repeating some of these steps as I've done them in a different video, but some of you might be seeing this video for the first time, and can give you a glance into the process of rendering on CGIFarm as well. Priority location, and I'm going to pause here because it might take, I don't know, a couple of minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to get the scene processed. And afterwards, I'm going to come back and continue with showing how you can create the jobs here, and then look on some of the renders that we get. All right, so the file finished. It was like 5 minutes or so. And to minimize this, when you click on the info button on the package, you're going to see the repath process on all the settings, some of the settings, not all of them, because we're outputting just the things that are interesting from your scene, I will say. So you have the active frame segment, the gamma output. This is an important thing because some users were claiming having different output gamma on their scenes from what they set up, but they actually override the 3ds Max output gamma, and this is the output that is set, for example. looks like everything is there, all the assets, not just all of them, but when you have missing assets, you're going to get this warning. I guess it's fine because it was rendering just okay, and you see the same assets missing here. So right now I'm ready to create multiple jobs, actually, not a job. I'm going to choose the package that I just uploaded, camera 1, select the camera here, put the frame range. You can also choose to render single frame distributed. For now, it's going to put 5 machines to render this job, but I don't need that. For the custom render settings, you actually can export the render settings, and let me see if that is doing the right thing. When you choose send to browser, it should have sent right here, but it didn't. That's why I wanted to see if it's doing this right thing. And if it's not doing it, like in my case, I'm going to talk with the programmers to see what is going on. You can export, choose to export a JSON file, so call it settings. And then in the settings, upload this file right like this. I'm not going to customize the settings because this is the wrong file to get the settings from anyway. You should submit the settings from the 3ds Max file that you used to create this scene, the cam1.max. Alright, so I'm going to create and submit the job. I'm going to do the same for cam number 2. I'm going to get back when I get the frames downloaded. One thing to mention is that if you go in CGIFarm sync, you can already see that I have 2 jobs that got created in this package that I just uploaded. And when the frame finish rendering is going to download this, it's going to upload from CGIFarm to you, but for you it's downloading the frame automatically. Alright, so the job's actually finished and the frames got downloaded. To open the download folder, you click on that folder and let's see what we have. Let's do this. Alright, it's not the prettiest render I guess you ever seen, but it was fast, and like I said, I don't have any talent for this type of things. Both frames got downloaded properly, and this should work just fine for all of the frames. As alpha. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments or contact me directly on info@cgifarm.com. You also have the option to add me on Skype with the ID CGIFarm, and yeah, I hope you're going to test our workflow. We're offering $20 worth of credits. We don't put any watermarks on the output, so feel free to add your scenes and let me know the results. Have a great day.